Hello, and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. In a summer of surprises, Rosé just may be the biggest surprise of them all. We are now well over a decade, which is like kind of hard for me to admit because I remember the wave of Rosé first crashing down on Manhattan when I first moved there in 2010. And we've had some time to wade through the murky waters to find ourselves mostly on the other side. There's been a lot of rosé that we've had to sift through over the last decade and a half. And I would argue that rosé is probably one of the more difficult types of wines to suss out, try to figure out what it is, how it's going to taste, if it's actually good just by looking at the label. But in an effort to make us all the savviest wine buyers that we possibly can, we are here to help you cut through the noise, to give you all the fun facts. And to do that with me today is my friend, my colleague, my fellow content creator, Raquel Warriors of Watch Me Sip on Instagram.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm so happy you're here too. Fellow California Instagrammer. You've been doing it for a while. When did you start your Instagram?
I don't know the official date because it was kind of a organic, slow roll. Yeah. But 2018 is when I actually started the blog portion. So that's the date I stick with. So quite a while.
Yeah. And always on wine?
Always wine. You know, I weave some food and travel in just because they seamlessly connect,
That's right.
As you know. But wine is always the focus.
And you're in Northern California. Did you grow up in that area?
I grew up in Chico, actually, and my heart's heavy for them right now. There's a bunch of fires happening there. Just all over the place. So our hearts go out to you. But I grew up in Chico, so more beer, almond land, and moved to Napa in 2015 to work in the wine industry. So traded in the beer for wine and lived in Napa for about 7 years working in the industry. That's where my love of wine grew, and then moved to the other side of the hill. So they say, and I'm in Sonoma County now for the last 2.
How are you liking it there? I know, people always think there's a rivalry between the two. Living in Napa, I never felt like there was, but now that you're over the hill, do you feel like there is a rivalry?
I don't think so. You will hear some comments sometimes, but I think it's understood that Sonoma and Napa are doing different things, right? And they're appealing to different types of wine lovers. All are welcome. The ones who want to drink some Pinot Noir, sparkling, white wine, come over to the Sonoma County side. If you're looking for your big reds, you know where to go.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's so funny. Like, I love that people compare the two, but like they really couldn't be more different. It's like comparing Bordeaux and Burgundy. Like, there's like, what's the point? Like, they do totally different things or different vibes. I love them both. And when I lived in St. Helena, like we would go over to Sonoma all the time because we had great food in St. Helena, but I do think that there was more abundant choices over on the Sonoma side in terms of food. So I think we're just lucky that they're close enough that we can have both at the same time.
Yeah, same. I find myself over on the other side of the hill weekly. So I can't choose between both of them. I love them equally.
I do too. And I saw that you were down in the Santa Maria Valley at a winery that I was at, I think like maybe a year ago at Presqu'île recently.
Yes, I loved it. And I think I may have gotten that recommendation from you.
Yeah.
So thank you. I can't even tell you how relaxed I was sitting there with the view.
Dude, isn't it so good? And the food is so good.
Yes. I've done a lot of wine and food pairing experiences in my time. And this I was not expecting. I mean, just the curated seasonal bites, and it truly was a full meal. I had 2 other guests with me and we couldn't finish the platter they bring. I was really impressed with their whole food wine program, and just also making it really approachable for people to come hang out, eat wine or drink food,
wine. Let's eat wine.
And creating a whole experience. Eat, drink, whatever. And really creating this whole experience. And not a lot of focus like on the wine, but just letting it shine through the experience with the food, which I really love.
I agree. I felt like it was really woven seamlessly into the experience. And it's actually not something that we see a lot of here in the US. I think like if you go to other wine regions, they do it really well. But I find for some reason in California, weirdly, like Presqu'île has been the one that's kind of figured it out. I also had a really good experience at Gloria Ferrer recently in Carneros that I will say um, sort of not rivaled Presqu'île, but like rivaled Presqu'île in a different way. But I'm so glad you had a great time there. And I will also just hint that there may or may not be a Presqu'île wine coming to a wine club shipment in the near future.
Ooh.
So I'm very excited. That was actually my first interaction with them. So I like to like live with wineries, you know, and wines for a little while before I like marry them. So it's been like a
Yeah.
full year that I have been like in.
You got a date.
I got a date.
You got a date
Yeah,
first.
we're entangled with each other. So I'm glad to hear your experience was not different than mine. And I think everyone
Yeah.
that is going to that like Santa Maria Valley, even like Santa Barbara, which is, you know, not too far. If you find yourself there, please put it on your list. It's one of my favorite wine tasting experiences, and you can find a video on that on Raquel's Instagram. I have one on mine if you want to sift a little further, but just such a fun time.
Yeah.
We have to talk about what is going on in the wine world, shall we? All right. I know you're a champagne girly, as am I. I don't know what has happened in the world, but LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, the company that owns like Moet, Veuve, Dom, Ruinart, Krug, they're saying that their shipments are down 15%. And the CFO, this is my favorite part, the CFO is speculating that it's because consumers aren't happy enough. They don't have enough to celebrate in life. And that is why champagne shipments are down. I don't even know where to start with this. Do you want to kick it off?
I am surprised to hear that because the last news I heard on champagne was that we were in a shortage.
Same.
Same. Right? I'm like, so people are drinking a champagne or it's the production. So I am surprised to hear this. I'm not sure if it is a direct correlation with happiness. It may just be money in pockets, and we're opting for a Cremant or a Prosecco as people learn more about the options that are in the sparkling world. They may be venturing out from champagne. That's my first guess. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, leave it to like the wine world to blame consumers first and foremost. Like at no point did you want to like, I don't know, have a little accountability. And by the way, like I love all of these champagne brands. I'm a big fan of LVMH. What I will say that LVMH doesn't do, and this is just anecdotal, I could be wrong here, and you've probably noticed it too, they do not do any sort of like influencer marketing. Like you never see influencers talking about them in like a non-organic way on Instagram or TikTok. Even like outside the wine sector, they really focus on doing like really big brand activations at events, like the Polo Cup is a good example. Krug does dinners all over the world, and they've really allocated, at least from my perspective, they've allocated their marketing budget to doing these like very big over the top things. And I think in some ways it's made them weirdly inaccessible. Like I think people are still grabbing Veuve and they're probably still growing Moet, but I don't know that people, the consumer that wants to splurge, like I don't know that they're reaching for Krug. I don't know that they're reaching even for Dom still. It is still a household name. So I know part of me wonders if like their lack of innovation, so to speak, has led to people not wanting to spend their dollars with them quite as much.
Right. It's almost like an unattainable luxury, which I think, like you said, their marketing has always fit in that box where they're elevating themselves. And it's like, so it seems so unapproachable with some of their brands that I think some of the younger generation is just opting for other labels that fit into their lives better or their lifestyle easier, that are targeting to them or are at the events that they're at. Which you make a good point about the influencer strategy. I've seen people at the polo match, but for Veuve, but that's the only one that I can think of as of late.
Yeah. And we are seeing other champagne brands working with influencers, doing other activations. So it's not like the champagne world isn't moving in that direction. But, I do have to wonder if at some point they may need to shift gears and sort of defend the spend, right? Like people are happy to buy Louis Vuitton bags because they see them on, the people that are on TikTok, the people that, are being
Right.
followed. And you don't really see that so much with like the wine side of things. And I will say, like, I think even their owners and CEO have publicly said like the wine side of LVMH is kind of like the quote unquote bastard child. Like they really don't care so much about like that's not where they're making their money. It's not that they don't care. It's just not where like the margins are. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope it's maybe an eye opener. I think there's plenty to celebrate out there. The Olympics are happening. Like who doesn't want to pop a bottle for the Olympics? So I'm not sure that it's a happiness thing. I do think that some of the blame has to be put back on LVMH. And listen, Raquel and I are both available for hire. So
right.
Call us.
Gladly accepting champagne.
Moving right along. Howard Backen, if you have ever been to the Napa Valley or even surrounding parts in Sonoma and enjoyed that beautiful Napa Valley farmhouse chic lifestyle architecture, you probably have Howard Backen to thank for that. And he has sadly passed away. I think, if you were to really pinpoint the person that has shaped the aesthetics of Napa Valley, I think you have to look to Howard Backen first and foremost. He's, influenced so much, ranging from restaurants and wineries, houses, buildings. And so many of the people that he's mentored have kind of gone on to do their thing and iterated off of that sort of farmhouse lifestyle. So Harlan, Meadowood Press Restaurant where I used to work, Rudd Estate. I mean, these are all places that were designed by architect Howard Backen. So sad to see him pass. But I was going to ask, do you have a favorite Howard Backen designed property?
Yeah, I was thinking through some of the wineries, and some of my favorites are Larkmead, Davis, La Jolla, which I think were all in his portfolio. And as you said, he definitely has a style. And I think as you're tasting, you start to notice that the different properties you go to. So it definitely is a loss, but he left behind a lot, especially in the Valley.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like Backen will continue on. And as I mentioned, he's got, notable proteges that are continuing to design in sort of his style, but with their own thumbprint. So we're sad to see him go. But as you said, his legacy lives on. And next time you're in Napa or Sonoma or in a Backen property, just think of him fondly and drink a good glass of wine. He was a guy that enjoyed his wine. He came to press a lot. So he will be missed for sure. I wanted to introduce not a new segment, but a segment that I've seen on other podcasts that I think is really fun. And this one kind of involved the wine. So you've probably seen this before, the Am I the Asshole? Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, there was a podcast I listened to recently that went through some of those. Super fun.
So I found one that I thought was really fun. I'm nowhere near even like the beginning stages of wedding planning, but anything wedding related is coming across my feed right now. So I'll paraphrase here. It's, am I the asshole for telling my stepmother she can't bring her own wine to my wedding? She said, a few days ago, my stepmom asked what alcohol would be at the wedding, and I shared that we weren't doing an open bar, or that we were doing an open bar with signature cocktails, beer, wine, and liquor. Long story short, she was not thrilled with the choice. She wanted to bring her own wine. The bride said that if she brought a few bottles in her purse, like she wouldn't know the difference. But then the stepmother was like, oh no, I actually want to bring like a cooler to your wedding filled with, just palm to face, filled with wine. And the bride was like, I think that might, like, this is a nice venue. Like, I don't think that's appropriate. And then like later she was like, yeah, actually the venue is like, you can't bring your own wine. And it became this like whole thing. And I'm curious where you side and like what your take is, because I have very strong feelings on this. So I'll let you go first.
Listen, I've had some really horrible wines at weddings. I'm sure we all have, right? It's a couple hours. Suck it up. Get a cocktail or a beer instead. And drink the wine you want to drink after, once you're home. It's one day and it's your daughter.
Stepdaughter, yes.
Or stepdaughter, right? So drink a couple glasses before you go in your hotel room. And then just drink whatever's available. And like you said, I think they're getting some special wine for them for the table. So be thankful for that and don't request anything else. I mean, the bride already has enough to worry about day of.
Yeah, it's her party. Like
that's my take.
No, I'm with you 100%. And as you said, if you cannot manage a few hours without your favorite Chardonnay, like I think you have some serious thinking to do. Like you have some like there's issues in your life beyond Chardonnay, and you should probably have them examined by a professional. Like we've all been there, right? Whether it's a wedding or some sort of like corporate event where like the wine is garbage. And listen, that is a whole other avenue we can explore on another day of like why these wines are so bad. But to your point, like have a cocktail, have a beer, spritz it up with some soda water. Like the day is not about the wine. The day is about the bride and the groom and your family and being there. And like, if you can't, see that, then I don't know, maybe just don't go.
Yeah.
Like,
right. General rule too. If anything ever says house white or house red on a menu, just don't order it. Opt for a cocktail
or turn it into a spritz. My rule is like, if you're absolutely like, I don't want hard liquor, you just get wine over ice, little club soda, little lemon, little lime. You're fine.
Totally.
Or even Sprite if you feel like but usually those wines have a decent amount of sugar. Yeah, I'm rarely drinking wine at events like that because like it's not where, listen, you can't mess up a vodka soda.
Yeah. Totally. And you're not there for the wine. You're there for the person.
Just like you're probably not there for the food either. Nobody gets excited about overcooked beef tenderloin, but you're not going to like bring your own Wagyu beef to the party because that's rude. So don't bring your own wine. So, all right. Well, I'm glad I'm also not the asshole. I don't think you're the asshole, and I don't think the bride's the asshole. But
I'm so glad I didn't come in here and have the complete opposite advantage.
I also think that like because I'm in the early stages of things, and maybe just because like I'm a wine person, I'm very pro bride on this matter. Like I just feel the bride and the groom and what they want goes, and nobody else has a say, even if you're paying. I'm sure we're going to get some comments for that. Okay. Speaking of getting some comments for that, I would just want to take a little pause to tell you two things. Number one, if you're enjoying this podcast, we would very much appreciate a like and a review. It's been a little while since you guys have given us some reviews. They help us. They're great. Make them positive, preferably. If you have negative things to say, we're available in the DMs for you in our Instagram. We will take your feedback with no issues. But we would love some positive reviews. That would super, super help us. The other thing is that we are a podcast that has an affiliated wine club. So there is a wine that goes with every single episode. And if you are not a part of the Unfiltered podcast wine club, this is your moment to shine, to get into it. It's going to be 4 bottles every other month. I hand select them, and then we drink them on the episode. I also do tasting videos separate, so you can really dive in. But it's a great way to learn about wine, to talk about wine, and also have some bottles curated for you. It's $120 plus tax, but including shipping, and you get 10% off of all of your wine access purchases. So if you are joining us and already a member of the Podcast Wine Club, go ahead and grab that pink bottle that looks like this right here. It's the Domaine Cinq Chemins. And we are going to be right back drinking that. If you're not a member, well, you can find all the things that you need to subscribe in the description below. We'll see you in a second. Here we go. Crack. Yes. Twist off, as you mentioned. We love a twist off. We love a twist off for rosé because rosé is something you traditionally don't age. Therefore, twist offs are A-okay. We love a guaranteed non-corked wine. Let's talk about rosé. I assume, I didn't even ask you before this podcast, but I've seen enough of your Instagrams that I think that you're like a fan of rosé. Yeah.
I love rosé. I wore pink for the occasion, and I haven't done it for the last 2 years, but I used to do a rosé roundup for about 4 years straight on my blog, and I would taste through about 50 to 100 rosés to create a list for every summer. And it was so fun. So I've tasted through a lot of rosé. Yeah, you could say I'm a rosé lover.
I had mentioned at the top of the episode, I do think rosé is a very challenging wine to navigate. And I say that because the way that rosé is made, right? You're starting usually with the red grape. The one that we're drinking is oddly an exception. But you're starting with the red grape and you're pressing it off of its skins almost immediately. Like it's getting a little bit of contact, maybe for a few hours, but that's it. And so for that reason, when you see rosé of Pinot Noir, rosé of Cabernet, rosé of Syrah, like those are like kind of helpful, except that all of the characteristics that you associate with those grapes, they all come from the skins. So when you're dealing with a wine that is not really sitting with those skins, it's not really tasting like Syrah. It's not really tasting like Cabernet Franc. Like it's tasting like something completely different than what most of us are used to. And I think for that reason, as well as the fact that like the color of rosé, throws people for a loop. And there's also a lot of rosé out there that has like really fun and like sort of kitschy labels. I think it becomes a really difficult category of wine to navigate. Do you agree with that or do you not agree with that? That's just my take.
I think rosé is one of the most misunderstood categories from like a general wine consumer level, right? I would say there's so many misconceptions and I get a lot of questions about like, what the heck even is rosé?
Okay.
Like, are there pink grapes hanging from a vine? From people that are just getting into wine all the way through, even those who have a general understanding of wine. I think rosé can be very complicated if you don't know what to look for. Because as you said, the shelves at the grocery store, not as bad as it used to be, but you walk in and it is just a blur of pink with usually like catchy, cute labels, and you just don't know what to pick.
No, it's like going to the nail salon and having to choose between like 1,000 different pinks, and you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's gonna look good.
They all look they all look the same. They're slightly different.
Yeah. So, I think there's a few ways to approach it. I want to start out by just sort of recapping, as I said, how rosé is made. So, as you alluded to, there are not pink grapes hanging from the vine, except that we actually have the one exception to that rule today.
Of course.
So we'll circle back to that. But yes, usually it's coming from red grapes that are, all grape juice is clear for the most part. We're squeezing the grape, we're extracting the juice, and that juice is usually left to macerate and take on a little color, kind of like we're tie dyeing something, right? The longer it sits in that dye, the more color and extraction it's going to take on. So if we were to let it sit fully, it would become a red wine. But if we take it off of the skins for, after a few hours, that's how we're going to get a pink wine, a rosé wine. So it's meant to be lighter, fresher. Usually these wines are not oaked in any sort of real way. If they see oak, it's, used French oak and only for a limited amount of time. A lot of times these wines are made in stainless steel or even concrete. And usually you see them released directly, if the harvest is 2023, you're going to see it in the spring of 2024, the summer of 2024. They're not usually allowed to go much longer than that. You might see it one extra year, depending on who's making it. And so that first way that we can make rosé is what's called direct press. You could also see rosé made in the saunier method, which is sort of a derivative of direct press, but this is basically where you're intending to make a red wine and bleeding some of the juice off to concentrate the red wine color. So the saunier ones are usually a little deeper in color. And then the last way that you're going to make that rosé is by blending a little bit of red wine into white. Now, you don't really see this with still rosé. If it's like super cheap, you might. Where you do see this is with sparkling rosé. So in champagne, this is a lot of times how rosé champagne is made. So usually at the end of the process, they're adding a little bit of Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier to get that rosé hue. But for the most part, we're talking about direct press. Now, to circle back, we have a rosé made from a grape called Grolleau Gris. I will fully admit, I was actually not familiar with Grolleau Gris prior to finding this wine.
Yeah. And Loire Rosé in general, I'm not drinking a lot of. So this is really fun. Same with the varietal, maybe a couple times I've ever had Grolleau
Yeah.
Gris. So thanks for sending this
Yeah,
one.
no, I was really excited to be introduced to this because I think it's really delicious. I love Loire Valley wines. We've done a whole episode on the Loire Valley.
Mhm.
It's really this place that is noted for having a lot of organic viticulture. It's noted, as being a great place for produce, for cheese. They kind of call it the breadbasket of France. And so in the Loire Valley, you're sitting along the river there that extends out to the Atlantic Ocean. And we're kind of at
Mhm.
the Atlantic Ocean side, kind of where like Muscadet is. Um,
Mhm.
as you get further in, you're talking about regions like Sancerre, Chinon, Puy-Fumé. Those are places that are marked by various grapes: Chinon, Cabernet Franc, Sancerre, Sauvignon Blanc, and then Puy-Fumé, Sauvignon Blanc as well. But you kind of
Mhm.
know those wines for being really light and fresh. Like there's very few wines that you're going to be
Mhm.
getting from the Loire Valley that are like big and ostentatious. Like I don't know about you, but like I've never had like
Right.
a super full-bodied wine from the Loire Valley. Like they just don't
Yeah.
really exist. And so when I see Loire Valley Rosé, I'm immediately thinking this wine is going to be in that style, which this totally is. So
Mhm.
this is coming from
Mhm.
a grape called Grolleau Gris. So this is
Mhm.
a pink hued grape. So if you look at like photos of it, I wouldn't necessarily call it like pink exactly. Like it's actually kind of more like your shirt color. Like it's kind of like a deeper magenta, not quite purple, but not quite white. Like it kind of sits in
Mhm.
between. So it's very light. This is actually almost like orangey salmon in color.
Yeah, I love the color. It's that, like you said, like, a pale salmon.
Hmm.
It's beautiful.
And then when you taste it, it drinks like a white wine. Like
Mm.
I don't, it has
Yeah.
like some fruitiness to it. Like, and I think also, I could be wrong on this. Like, if you look at the photos of these grapes, like it does look like there's still a little bit of like green skin kind of hinting in there. So I wonder if like that orange
Mhm.
hue is also just coming from the fact that this is kind of
Mhm.
almost like orange wine adjacent. Um, but when I don't
Mhm.
know, when I smell this, this is just like it's giving like sea spray and like really tart fruit. We think of Provence as being this place that
Mhm.
has really beautiful kind of ripe fruit, not super, super ripe like California, but this is almost like more on the tart side, lots of like melon and like rindy characters. But
Mhm.
super light.
I love the acidity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so fresh and, like, energetic, and it just like, at the back of, my mouth, it just gives me that instant where you're just instantly like, "I need another sip." I'm
Yes.
salivating, like, I want more rosé, or I want something, like, salty
Cheese. Don't you want cheese
to eat
immediately with
with
this
this.
wine?
Yeah, yeah, and it has, like, almost a little, for me, I've been eating so many peaches lately because
Mm.
they're fresh, and so I get a little, like, white
Mm-hmm.
peach and then, like, a grapefruit peel, and definitely that, like, salty, almost like a little chalky vibe,
Totally.
on the finish, which I really love.
Yeah, I agree with all of those things. I think this is a white wine lover's rosé. This is someone who loves like a little more acidity, who doesn't love a ton of like big fruit. It's really clean, it's really fresh. It's not quite as like strawberry as you would find in like Provence. It definitely leans into like
Mhm.
some of these other more like tart fruits, which is really fun. And I think this is the beauty of rosé is like it's not just one thing. Like you can find so many different styles. So I think if you're looking at rosé from the Loire Valley, you can kind of expect this almost no matter what the grape is because this region just lends itself to like minerality and acidity and freshness and vibrancy. And I will say like this is a wine that's coming from 20 to 25-year-old sustainably grown vines. It's grown in schistous soils for those of you who are curious about that. Although I guess in something like this, it really does matter because so much of the flavor is coming from the actual juice, which is really reflective of the soil. This is a really gentle skin maturation. And then, the other thing that's really interesting is this is sitting on the lees for 8 to 14 months with regular batonnage. So some of that like
Mhm.
texture that you're getting in there I wouldn't call this a
Mhm.
creamy rosé, but I think without the batonnage, which I'll explain what that is in a second, you would be a little more like zigzaggy than it is. So that batonnage it's a
Right.
lee stirring. So those dead yeast cells that are sitting, usually in tank or in the barrel, we see this in champagne, right? This is that autolytic
Mhm.
character that champagne gets that's a little brioche and toasty, and it can give this like round creaminess. And so what they do is they leave the leaves in the barrel. They don't rack the wine off. And then they do like a stirring of it to kind of give it that like velvety sort of textured kind of thing going on, which I really love. Yum, yum. Yeah, cheese for sure. Goat cheese all day long with this. Do you have favorite wine pairings with rosé or food pairings with rosé?
Actually, yes. One that comes to mind, fish tacos,
Yes.
or like shrimp tacos with rosé, I think is one of my favorite pairings of all time. And then, like you said, any type of like creamy goat cheese with like a really salty cracker. I'm trying to think what else. I'll get behind oysters and rosé.
Yeah, I could do oysters, especially something like
yeah,
this.
for sure.
Yeah, we're in the land.
seafood.
We're in the land of oysters. You know, muscadet and oysters is like a very classic pairing. So this would totally be right on board, especially if you did it with like a mignonette, or even if you did a like a grilled oyster, would be so good with this.
Ooh, what about you? I know you have a favorite pairing.
I do have a favorite pairing. I've talked about it on here before. So my favorite pairing with rosé, and I was actually just talking about this. I was up in the Finger Lakes, and I want to circle back to that. My favorite pairing is raw radishes or blanched that are served cold with softened butter and a little bit of Maldon sea salt. Your eyes are so big right now.
That is very specific.
This is.
Did you first have this at like Charter Oak or something? That sounds like something.
No, but they totally do something like that. No, this is something you'll see in France. I think in Provence a lot, but I think I'm trying to remember the very first time I had it. I think it was in California, but yeah, this was like my little summer snack. It's a vehicle for butter. Like, let's just call it what it is. But there's something about like the spicy crispness of the radish and the like the salty, but that just works so well with rosé. And like, I'm telling you, it is the best.
Now I need to know your favorite butter brand, because you have to use a good butter. You do have to use a good butter.
Yes.
Eating it.
100%. In California, it's Strauss for sure. Like there's no substitution here.
When I go to France, I take the little packets home with me.
Smart.
I'm like, give me as many of those as I can.
Yeah. My other favorite pairing, this is a recent revelation. I'm sure you've been to a Costco a handful of times in your life. They sell the big bags of microwavable edamame. Have you ever bought these?
Okay.
So they're like,
not from there, but
yeah, I mean, you can get them anywhere. But I get the big bag from Costco. And they're like little single serve bags of edamame. You microwave them for like 3 minutes, and then I add again some flaky sea salt. That and a glass of rosé. Oh my gosh. Lights out. It's so good because edamame is like, again, kind of like radish and butter, like sweet, savory, salty. Like it has all of those things.
Little salty,
And that's such a, I actually think I might have that tonight. The Olympics are kicking off.
I'll try it and report back.
Yes. Please let me know how it goes. Rosé is one of those wines that I think doesn't get the credit that is due in so many ways. And food pairing is one of them, because you have everything you need in terms of what makes food pairable with wine, or what makes wine pairable with food. So like you have a little bit of tannin, you have acidity, you have texture, you have the lightness, like you have all the components, but you know, it can be very, very versatile. I used to call rosé like the denim of wine. Like you can kind of wear it with anything. That was back in the early 2000s when denim did go with everything. No, less so today.
Well, I think we're back in that era. Denim is hot. You know, we're circling back around. But as you said, pairing rosé with food, I think a lot of people don't realize, like you said, just how flexible it can be. And as you have your different ranges, I think a lot of people assume that only like your darker rosés that have a bit more of that body and tannin, like, you know, something from Spain or south of France and in the Rhone, the Tavel or something, can pair with food. But these lighter iterations definitely can as well.
I agree. On that note of color, I'm sure this is something that you come across a lot. Are people still confused, like, and think that the darker hued rosés are sweeter?
I think so. I think we're working in the right direction. But a common misconception is definitely like your brain just equates it to sweet. And that's the phenomenon of, White Zinfandel, which that's where I started my wine industry, was working for the family that created White Zin. So,
which is such a good story,
hats
though.
off to them, which is still, amazing. A lot of people love White Zinfandel still. And it paid my bills for many years. So I'm here for it. But I think people they think of Anjou or some other sweet wine, and it doesn't necessarily equate to rosé, as most rosé is dry today. But even my mom, sorry mom, but she says, I don't like rosé because it's sweet. And I'm like, I've told you so many times it's not sweet. I'm hoping that we're moving in the direction that people now, with more of the rosé boom and it being everywhere, that we now know being rosé does not equate it to be sweet. And just because it is a darker form of rosé, it's not sweet.
The color is interesting in that, like, it can tell you some things about the wine, but not it's far from the whole story. One, obviously we just said, it does not mean it's sweet. The color is in no way an indicator of sweetness. And as you said, most rosé out there is dry. I do want to point out that White Zinfandel, Sutter Home White Zinfandel, is a form of rosé. It is rosé. It's just a sweeter rosé. So they do exist. But most of what you're seeing out there does not have any residual sugar or any notable amounts of residual sugar. White Zinfandel from Sutter Home does. That's fine if that's your jam. I will say there's a few producers that are like throwing it back and making a dry White Zinfandel, which is very exciting as well. But the other thing with rosé is, in addition to like the color doesn't tell you anything, the place does tell you something. So I do think that, like, of all the things that you should be paying attention to, it's probably where it's coming from. As I mentioned, the Loire Valley tends to be a place that's noted by freshness. Provence, like, always tends to have these like very creamy, very soft, very easy to drink, sort of lighter acidity styles of rosé. Warmer climates are going to give you more of those like very lush, ripe fruit profiles. So if you're going to get something from the warmer parts of Napa Valley and the warmer parts of Sonoma, and I say warmer parts of Sonoma because there are some cooler parts of Sonoma, just note that you might get a little acidity there, but definitely pay attention to like the weather and the places that your rosés are coming from. What are some of your like hot tips on finding rosé?
I agree. It's definitely location. I think if you're looking for something that is a bit more crisp, lighter in style, going to be just a porch pounder on a hot day, definitely go to Provence, or even Sonoma County. We've definitely got some crushers over here where they're that light style. I also think if you get to know a producer or even an importer, that really helps. So then you just understand your style. And if you don't even know the place or the way that the wine is made, at least like, hey, I've bought from this importer before, and I usually align with their wines and what they bring in. That's kind of a general rule for at least like wine that's coming from European 100% countries. Importers, it's just hard to understand.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We're actually going to do a whole episode on importers coming up for that very reason. Like, they just tell you so much. Kitschy labels. I was actually going to include that you should avoid kitschy labels, except that I started thinking that like there are some really good rosés that have kitschy labels, I think. And I actually maybe wouldn't file this under kitschy, but I know you're a fan of Love You Bunches, as am I.
I knew you were going to say Stoltman.
Yes.
I knew you were going to say it.
It's so good. And it's like, it's one of these that's like very easy to find. I think Space Age Rosé is also like very well made and relatively easy to find. Yeah. So like there's exceptions to the rule, but I would say in general, like your kitschier labels, just expect that like maybe they're not going to give you like the most site specific wines, but they're not to be avoided entirely, I guess is my point there.
I know. It's just complicated. Sometimes.
Yeah. So what are your you have vetted hundreds of rosés. What are your favorites?
Okay.
She has a list. I know.
I actually wrote down. I did. Yeah, I wrote down. I'm like, I need to, how do I make this into only like 4? Because I have lots. You can go check my blog later for all those if you'd like. But so locally, here on the Sonoma County side, I love Copan. They make a really light style Pinot Noir rosé, direct press from Anderson Valley. So super cool climate. And that one is just so crisp, delicious, crush it. And then over on your side, Napa Robert Cinq, they do their Vin Gris every year. I always seek that out. So delicious. And that one actually is a little darker in style, but it is direct press as well. Again, a Pinot Noir. And then I love the Domaine Tempier. I know we share the same love for that one.
Tempier Rosé it's the goat. It's the wine by which everyone measures themselves. And if you have not, if you've not found yourself a bottle yet, it's time to start bribing your local wine shop. Wine Access has it occasionally. It's super hard to find. Kermit Lynch is the importer. I did find a local wine shop around me that didn't know what it was. But they had like a ton of Kermit Lynch wines on the shelf. And so I asked them, I was like, hey, do you get an allocation of Domaine Tempier? And they were like, what is it? And I was like, Domaine Tempier Rosé, it's Bandol Rosé, like it's imported by Kermit Lynch. They're like, all right, let me see. Anyway, they were able to get me a healthy allocation of Tempier Rosé. So I'm hooked up for the summer. I'm very excited.
I drink through it so fast. I can never keep it in my wine fridge. I'm so bad, but it's definitely the one I reach for first because it's so delicious. And then lastly, which I think will be fun to talk about, is I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the Clos Tiburon.
Yes, I know this one.
So good. And definitely like different vibe of rosé, but so fun. And that's one that is age worthy.
Yes.
Like if you're into that sort of thing. I actually have one that I've been like kind of just keeping in my fridge for a while to see what happens. So
TBD. Yeah. That wine was actually, I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast. That was my very first by the glass placement when I was a somm. Yeah.
Boy.
So when I was a little baby somm, the wine director was like, you can pick one rosé for a by the glass. And I chose the Tiburon. And that's
a good pick.
It was a good pick. And he was like, really? And I was like, this is the one. But yeah, it's a darker hued rosé. It's pretty high in acidity. It's got some body to it, but it's still really light. It's a really cool wine that I think works incredibly well with food. It's not what I would necessarily consider like a patio pounder. Like I actually think it prefers more a little like charcuterie or something with it. But a really, like, again, going back to this idea that like rosés are, they can be anything from like a really interesting fun white leaning wine to like something that feels like a chilled red. Like it can really like run the gamut. I love all those picks. I'm a huge fan of Copan, obviously Tempier, Tiburon. Those are all wonderful. I also, as I mentioned, love Tempier. I will drink Tanker. In fact, I blinded my sister on it accidentally the other week. And she was drinking. She's like, what? She was like, this is so good. And I was like, I know, isn't it? Like, it just doesn't taste like anything else. But that's one of my favorites. The Hirsch Rosé, Jasmine Hirsch, Hirsch Vineyards.
Ooh, yes.
That rosé is just dynamite. I love it so much. I'm actually going to be featuring it at Charleston Food and Wine Classic. I'm very excited.
Fun.
Delicious. Lorenza.
In that kind of same, love.
Yes, we love Lorenza.
That's a pounder. That's a porch pounder.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's one that's mostly, it's all coming from Lodi, from California, but it definitely has some acidity to it. And I've actually had some of those with age and they're delicious. I was also just up in the Finger Lakes. I just got back and I have to tell you, the rosé of Cabernet Francs from up there are outstanding. Like so almost universally delicious. I was up there with my fiance and we were both like, everything's really good, but like, why are the rosé of Cabernet Francs like just so delicious and so inexpensive? Like, I don't think there were very few wines that we had in the Finger Lakes in general that were over $20 a bottle. And I would say these rosés were like, $13, $14. So if you can find like some Finger Lakes Cabernet Franc, they're delicious.
Last one that just popped into my head that's been on my radar of like, I need to try this is, and maybe you have, is the Marine Layer Rosé.
Oh, I don't think I've had theirs.
Everyone's been talking about it.
Ooh,
It's
I like green
the
layer.
hot rosé on the market, and so I really want
Oh,
to try it.
okay. Oh, and Ode to Lulu. I forgot from Bedrock. I love the Ode to Lulu. So if you want to try something that's like that is a
Oh yeah.
little Tempier adjacent, the team at Bedrock, their rosé is called Ode to Lulu, and Lulu Pinot was the the founder of Domaine Tempier. So they made this rosé sort of in a similar style, and they also make it in a box, which is super fun. I feel like I could go on and on about
Sounds
my favorite
delicious.
rosés.
I know, same.
I know I'm missing some flowers from Sonoma Coast. Like there's just a million that I'm
Oh,
missing.
classic.
So good.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a really good rosé? Like what are I'm sure you've got like some sort of system having vetted so many.
I think, it does depend on, again, like the style, and what you're going for on when you're drinking that, where you're drinking it, what you're drinking it with. But overall, I would say it just needs to be balanced with like the acidity. For me, acidity is big. So when I'm looking to drink a rosé, a lot of times I'm looking for something that has a really like energetic acidity, is refreshing, but also adds something to the palate. Like I don't want to just drink something and not get
Mhm.
anything. So something that is flavorful, has really bright notes, but also adds some sort of complexity, because I think that's the thing with rosés is you could drink a rosé and enjoy it, and it just kind of goes down like water. But I am looking for it to have a little bit of a characteristics to
Yeah,
it
I agree.
that make it stand out from just like downing, something you don't really care about.
Yeah.
So
And then
I would say it kind of has to have the perfect trifecta of any wine,
And I
really.
do think I was actually going to mention that it was interesting as we were listing off some of our favorites. Very few, most of them were domestic. And I do think that that is sort of reflective of this huge rosé boom that happened in like the 2010s, where we had just like mass produce. Like everyone thinks like, oh, Provence rosé is the best, it's the best, it's the best. But like I think what a lot of people don't know is like there was a lot of garbage coming out of Provence for like a long time
Hmm.
because they were just trying to keep up with demand. And when that happened, it really forced a lot of producers in the US to get really good at making rosé. And so it took a few years, but I think we're basically at a point where like the strong ones have survived and there's
Hmm.
there's potentially
Yeah.
better domestic rosés. I know some people are like, this is blasphemy. There's potentially better domestic rosés than I think there are maybe imports right now. And I think both of us listing off so many domestic speaks to that.
Yeah. And I think for a while, here locally, we were seeing a lot of people trying to keep up with the rosé demand by just doing like Saunier or bleeding off
Hmm.
of, wines they already had and they were pulling to make red. But now they're growing the grapes specifically. Like I
Yeah.
know Copan has a specific vineyard just for their rosé, and like you said, are taking it a bit more serious, than they were in the
Yeah,
past.
I completely agree, and I think it as you were talking about what you look for in a good rosé, I think that's what it comes down to is like you want to find a producer that is making it with intent, like it's not an afterthought. And I
Mm,
think some of these domestic producers, like that's exactly what's happening. It's not an afterthought. It's something that they designate a vineyard to. There's specific winemaking techniques around
mhm.
it. And they really thought about how they want that rosé to fit in with the rest of their portfolio. So I think it's really exciting to see the trajectory that has been rosé and how much fun people are having with it. Bad rosés, what do you think makes a bad rosé?
Oh, well, I don't want to go back to sweet, but
Yeah.
cloyingly sweet. Um, Lacking any sort of flavor.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, a bit too, like the acidity is just,
Mm.
overbearing, right? It's like they're almost trying to overcompensate and make it extra fresh and crisp and refreshing, but it's almost like, do I have a Sauvignon Blanc in
Right.
my
Is this Pinot
glass? Like,
Grigio? What's
what am
happening?
I
Yeah.
drinking? Did you just add some color? And which they are, I've seen some New Zealand like Sauvignon Blanc rosés, and teach their own,
Oh,
but that's not what
interesting. I
I'm
didn't
looking
know
for.
that. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think cloyingly sweet is no, like I'm okay if you like a little bit of sweetness, that's totally fine. But cloyingly sweet, no, I'm not into that. And I do see producers really just harvesting so early and leaning into that acidity that you're like, this isn't nice to drink. Like I want
Mm-hmm.
a wine that I don't have to have food with. And sometimes these super high
Take my
acid.
enamel
Yeah. And
off. Yeah.
sometimes these super high acid rosés, I'm like, this isn't the point. I think we've missed the boat here. What is the max that you'll spend on a bottle of rosé? I know this is sort of a load. We could take Tempier off the table if you'd like, because that's about $50 a bottle.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the most I've ever spent on a rosé. I think the Clos Tiburon is around there as well. So I would say I'm usually in the 30s, like 30s
Okay.
range is,
That's not nothing.
but no, but I think you can find some really great rosé still within like the 15 to 25 range as well. So anywhere from 15 to 35,
Yeah,
40.
I think that's
I've got a large range depending on what it's for.
I think that's a good range to be in.
If I'm going on the boat, it's going to be a, $20 rosé.
Right.
If I'm savoring it at home, it might be a little bit more expensive.
The one that we're drinking is $20 for those of you who are wondering. So it sits right in the middle. The Hirsch is $45. If you can find, sometimes you'll see the Tempier as much as like $70 a bottle. Sometimes you'll see it on a wine list for a lot more than that. The only other one that I can think of that's like more expensive, there's a few Napa producers that make really expensive rosés. I won't call them out, but I would say in general, they're not worth it.
I think Minuti or Ott has like
They do.
It's got the blue wax and it's like $100.
Yeah, and
or
Chateau
something.
Declan has one as well. Yeah, so there's a few out there that are single vineyard. I have a hard time with those. If that's what you want to drink, I'm never going to judge you for it, but I don't think there's any reason to be spending more than $50-ish on a bottle of rosé. It would have to be something really, really out of control good. And I have to tell you, I don't think that I found anything better than the Tempier. So it is the GOAT. We did talk about the aging of rosé. There are a few exceptions to this rule that rosé does not need or want to be aged. I think in general, rosé is something that you buy at the beginning of the season. You drink it through whenever. And then, if it's still sitting there a year later, no worries. You can drink it. But after that, it's time to start considering its use in frosé, is my opinion.
Love it. Yeah. Do it or a spritz or a punch or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, there's very few cases in which aged rosé is a good thing. I was going to play a little Rosé Olympics, but I think the U.S. has already won. So we really didn't list too many from other places. The Loire Valley, I think this is delicious. I'm not drinking a ton of rosés from Bordeaux or Burgundy. I think in France, outside of Provence, it is the Loire Valley for me. And then outside of that, there's some really delicious ones coming out of Spain. I've had some really yummy ones actually coming out of Piedmont in Italy. There's some great rosés of Nebbiolo that I've had. So I think it's a fun way to like play around and taste different regions. But in general, this is just a buy what looks interesting kind of game. It's a really narrow selection, or I should say focused selection on Wine Access. And I do like every producer that's on there. They've offered Minuti in the past. I think Lorenza's on there. This one's on there that we're drinking. But just have fun and have a snack. I also want to just make mention of, I don't know if you've seen this on my Instagram, but I found this beach bag that you can pour two standard size bottles of wine into this reusable bag, and then it dispenses out of the side. And it's like the best $20 that I've spent all summer. I highly recommend, 10 out of 10. So if you're looking for a fun way to enjoy your rosé poolside or by the beach, because we go to a beach where drinking's not allowed, as most beaches around here are, a fun and discreet way to enjoy your rosé while your toes are in the sand. Any other fun buys? Any fun, like, how do you like to consume rosé? Any other like fun hot tips?
Oh gosh. Well, I remember having a wine purse about 10 years ago. So, but the beach bag is definitely next level. I usually just pour it in a clean canteen and go.
Nice.
I've got some like insulated ones that are, fit a whole bottle of wine. So it's perfect. But I also think maybe we should touch on that we didn't was the chocolate rosé out of a Perron. I love a Perron moment with the
I love it.
Is it Ameztois chocolate? Like that's
I love it.
For summer.
I love a good chocolate. I do love a good chocolate rosé. And if you've never seen a Porron, just Google it. It's Porron. It's a classy way.
It does look a little bit like a certain paraphernalia, but it is a wine accessory.
Yeah, it's a way to it's a classy way to like beer bong or something, or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's it's a very standard thing that you see in Spain. I love that chocolate, and I do love the Amatoy chocolate rosé. I think it's
so
delicious.
Good. I forget about it.
I'm gonna go grab a bottle. And being Portugal as well, there's lots of like delicious Vinho Verde rosés
and lower alcohol, and so you can just crush it all day long.
And I did say like seasonally, you can drink it all year round. Nobody is going to tell you not to. Yeah. And they are delicious year round. But I will say my season for the rosé is the warm weather. So with that, the weather is actually finally not humid here on the East Coast. So I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that. I'm sure you've got some delicious Friday afternoon activities to get to as well. And I'm sure those of you listening have some delicious Friday or Saturday, whatever day that ends in Y activities you like to get to. So thank you so much for being with us. Again, if you are not a member of the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club, you can find everything you need to sign up below. Raquel, where can the people find you?
Thanks. Yeah, loved being on here. Thank you so much, Amanda and Wine Access. You can find me everywhere at Watch Me Sip on Instagram and watchmesip.com. I hope you follow along. I post about all the great places to go wine tasting and make wine fun and approachable. So hope to see all of you guys there. Cheers.
You also make the most fun viral videos. So if you see see a great wine viral video, it's probably Raquel's. She has a good time with that. Well, it's good to have you. So fun. And for those of you enjoying this wine, I hope you loved it. Tell me that you loved it via Instagram by sharing your stories. You can follow us at Wine Access Unfiltered on there. And until next time, cheers, guys.
Cheers.